My hair good?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just lucky to have some.
In Dutch we say it could be worse.
I'm just lucky to have some.
Okay, hi everyone. I think we are live now, so thank you very much for joining and for listening in today to our live YouTube session and podcast. My name is Eva Lianne Veldkamp, and I am leading a COPE working group on psychological safety, bullying, sexual assault and harassment in the maritime sector. You're currently listening in on some conversations we're sharing on this podcast from members from this COPE working group. And this podcast is hosted by the Northeast Maritime Institute, College of Maritime Science, which created the Center for Ocean Policy and Economics, called COPE. So, on today's episode, we focus on allyship, and we focused on the general aspects of allyship in part 1 of this podcast, which we did 2 weeks ago. And today, in part 2, we dive deeper into this topic of allyship, and we are going to talk about some concrete actions you can take today. So today we're having a talk with Patti, Tutalo, and Gordon Foot, who you can see on the screen now. Hi, they're 2 members of our working group, and they both have experience at sea, and they both have many interesting things and expertise and insights to share. But before we start, I would just like to point out that you can, if you are watching this, you can also leave your comments and ideas in the chat box on this meetings. So if you have that, please let us know, and then we can all benefit from the information you share, and we can interact with you a little bit. So please feel welcome to do that if you like. So, okay, so let's start. Patti, could you please introduce us to the subjects today, maybe?
Yeah, so I love this topic. Today we did the broad overview, like you said, but today it's really about diving in a little bit more and making it more actionable. Like, what? First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about the why behind it, like why allyship makes so much sense, not just from it makes sense logically, and it contributes to all of these things from the broad picture. But I'm also going to break it down by data and some and show one study, discuss one study that was done about how it can really help performance work in a lot of pieces of the workforce. Benefit the bottom line is ultimately what we're going towards. And also, we're going to talk about ways to place allyship in action. So I feel like oftentimes we talk about these concepts in more abstract and more theoretical or even broader picture, but it's like, what does this mean today? Like, what could I do today to really, really start to break this down? So if you want, we could start with data. Do you want me to dive into data first? Okay. So I know that one thing that, on this podcast, which we are going to do, is we're going to get more of the international perspective and get into more cultures. But today I am going to focus on a US study, but I think that the concept is applicable to everyone around the world. Because the bottom line is allyship is important, and it will help your workforce. So for example, Bentley University in 2021 did a study on, the Center for Women in Business did a study on elevating allyship in the workforce. And they found that employees and organizations that value inclusion and allyship report feeling greater happiness and are more likely to go above and beyond for their organizations. To further break that down, 30 to 50%, people are 30 to 50% less likely to leave, 56% more likely to work to improve their performance, 75% less likely to take a sick day, huge there, right? And up to 167% more likely to recommend their organizations as a great place to work. So as we sit here and talk about bigger picture of the maritime industry, we're talking about issues with recruiting, issues with retention, and even performance, right? So when you look at allyship, it's connected to all of those. So if you're not on board with allyship as a concept, get on board from a business, it makes sense business from a business standpoint, because it's just gonna improve your organization overall. So I kind of wanted to stop there, but I'll pause in case you guys have any comments about that.
No, I think it made very much sense, and thanks for letting us know and sharing all that information. I think it's just pointing out how important this is, and that it's so Gordon in the last session already talked a lot about allyship. So Gordon, maybe you can take it a little bit further with what Patti just said.
Hi everyone, tuning in, listening and viewing. Yeah, this is like a part two. So my name's Gordon. I'm in the UK. So between Patti and I, we're actually at either side of the Atlantic. Different genders, obviously, as well. So some of the topics that we're encroaching on with regards to SASH, DEI, and allyship specifically encompasses a lot of other things when they talk about depression and stress within the workplace and the job, how to be a professional, how to act. Some things that I'd like to just know on. I know a lot of seafarers probably subscribe to GCaptain, Safety for Sea, Maris, Maritime Executive of that. But between the part one that we did and part two now, the World Health Organization and the ILO put out from the editorial team, how to address mental health at work. That's a big topic. It has been throughout the pandemic, and people are taking note of that now. Also, another one that came up again from the editorial team on Safety for Sea, what about women seafarers' rights? So there was a whole article, sort of reminding everyone again, women still constitute just 1.2% of the global seafarer workforce. And some of these figures from BIMCO and ICS are surveys that they have undertaken, like a lot of seafaring unions and seafarer charities do as well. They do note on a happier side, this is a 45% increase from 2015, but of course that's not just seagoing roles, that's across the whole maritime. It represents slow progress. So some of the things that we talk about and have discussed, especially during part one, was the whole gambit, very much safety related from my point of view, because I work in the offshore industry. So it's a high risk environment to start with. And a lot of the ships are very technical and undertaking some technical and high risk work there. So the harmony that you've got to have within the seafarers and all the mariners that come together to make that project is very important. So issues of welfare, mental health, and to make sure that there's policies and procedures involved if there are harassment and bullying. And this is not just gender specific. I've seen it at sea myself more often than not between males. So it's how to create that harmony and everyone's being safe and feeling included. And like Patti's just described there, some of the research that's done, whether it be from academia or like I've suggested from the WHO and the ILO themselves about how we present and go about our everyday work as professionals. It's all to do with the harmony that we create there. And the best way, of course, like I said in part one, is just to be decent human beings. But yeah, it's good to have the statistics behind it, like Patti was saying, because these are actionable things. These are things that you can do day in, day out at your workplace. So I know Patti wants to discuss a bit about that, but from the project side in the maritime, doing engineering construction offshore is very much a process, especially toolbox talks, briefings, a whole variety of different meetings that we have between contractors, subcontractors, and the client during the day. And it's very important to think about how we're adapting, whether it's EQ or allyship that we're using. We have to be, conscious of the different cultures, different outlooks on life, people's different worldview, and we have to remain safe. And we all want to be comfortable as professionals when we go about our business. So it's important to consider a whole host of these issues, if you like, or challenges that we have from there. So Patti, maybe you'd like to carry on with that in regards to briefings and toolbox talks, how allyship can play a part in that, which is very much to do with safety, but also, like you've mentioned there, the retention. People would want to stay with a company that is treating them with respect and so forth.
Yeah, I think, that in the safety piece, we talk about, obviously, safety a lot on this podcast. And I think that there's so many ways to define it and so many factors that contribute to safety. And I love that we focus a lot on that aspect of it, because it's so huge. And allyship, when it comes to safety, is like you mentioned, is whenever you see something wrong, you can say something, and feeling like you're in an environment where it is okay to say something. That's like one of the basic tenets of safety, right? Is being able to speak up when something doesn't look right. And when it comes to allyship, one of the best practices is, if you have a meeting or if you're on a team, that to make sure everybody's included, make sure that the speaking time is distributed in such a way that it's not just one person hogging the mic, so to speak. Like, it's got to be, everybody has a voice. And then for those people that may not feel like they have a voice, amplifying their voice. So whenever, encourage them to say something, and then when they do say something, you amplify it. Meaning, so for example, if Eva were to say something right now about, a stat about allyship, I would go back and say, Eva, that was an amazing stat on allyship. Maybe not with that level of enthusiasm, but the point being is to repeat what she said and also give her credit for what she said. This is such a simple thing, but it goes a very long way. And I know with both of you, Gordon and Eva, you guys do this all the time with me on LinkedIn. I'll post something and then you will amplify it and you'll repost it, or you'll like it, or you'll comment. And that's a form of allyship that's easy to practice. So I just want to put a little note out there. I appreciate that. And then along those
you
lines,
do that too, by the way. So thank you also.
yeah,
Can I just add to that a little bit more before you proceed?
Yeah.
Because I just heard Gordon also was talking about that he was so happy to see the scientific base behind some of these things we are talking about. And I think that's also some part like of the things that we're talking about now. What is allyship? Because in order to feel safe, I think you also need to be seen or valued, or you have to feel like safe in a place where you can belong or something. I don't know how you can say, but you have to feel safe. And if you want to feel safe, you sometimes need that from other persons. You need to hear from other persons you're okay, or what you think or what you say or what you do is very nice, or also it doesn't have to be like a very nice thing. You can also just see somebody, or make them feel
it's professional respect, really, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what it is. And when we think about things like courtesy or etiquette, some of the words like that, they're not particularly English words either. But when you're thinking about that, that's just being a decent human being. You have respect for when somebody wishes to talk, and of course you then listen. And when they finish, you move on to somebody else. And I'm conscious of that in a leadership position, because if we have a meeting, which is a daily progress meeting, it's chaired and hosted by the contractor, and then as supporting the client in the work that we're doing out there, I make a real conscious effort to actually say the very minimum. I let everyone else have their say. If there's something pertinent within the project or the scope, or something specific safety related, or that's happening that day, of course, like you've mentioned there, I might get them to repeat it, or just say, all right, so can we just clarify so everyone's on board here? We're going to do X, Y, Z. And that's about it. But I also make sure that where there's quiet people in that room, they've obviously been invited to that meeting for a reason. And if they've said nothing, that always raises alarm bells for me. So I give them the opportunity and use if you like, it is like a power game. The power is there for me to introduce someone. So I say, right, the two ladies there or that gentleman there, you haven't actually contributed at the moment. Now's the opportunity. Do you agree with this? Is everything running smoothly, sort of thing? So it is a case of just general courtesy. I mean, common sense. It's not very common.
I think it depends.
So that's
on
that's the wrong phrase to use, but it is just the gentle way of keeping the flow and everyone contributing. So when we talk about psychological safety in all these aspects of allyship and that, it's ensuring that ensuring that people have a voice wherever they are on the hierarchy or whatever they have to contribute. There's no such thing as a stupid question ever. So, and again, whether they be junior or senior, they all have a voice and it should be listened to. And I think that's what brings harmony to everything, but also respect, because people leave that meeting thinking, there's a good general respect in there. So people feel as though they belong, want to commit, and then motivated to do that little bit more, that little bit better for everyone.
Yeah, and sorry, Patti, just go on, please.
Oh, I just wanted to tease that out a little bit, because I think you said a couple of things in there that I want to point out. The one thing you said was, you mentioned power, and that is what allyship is really about, is that you use the power and privilege that you have to benefit or to help those people that don't have that same level of power and privilege. And what crossed my brain when you were talking about that was like when you're on a ship and the lowest person in the hierarchy on the ship might not get that same level of inclusion. So for example, like say it was a cook or something, to wake up in the morning and say, good morning, thank you for making my breakfast. That's actually one of the ways to show allyship, is just by using gratitude. And then taking it one step further, what about, like having a conversation with that person about maybe what's going on in their world of work. And you might find, being again, this is just good leadership too, but I'm just breaking it down from an allyship standpoint, is what is going on in your world of work today? What obstacles are you having? And then advocating for those things, like ways for them to overcome them. That's another form of allyship, is understanding their problem areas or their issues of the day, and then trying ways to, such as like, I don't have the right pot or pan today or whatever, and then advocating for whatever they need. That kind of, I don't know if it's a great example, but my point is like just really breaking it down of how you use your power to really influence somebody that does not have that level of power.
I think that makes so much sense. Yeah.
We're human beings, and we're not alone in the world, and on projects and on ships, seagoing, or in the ports themselves. We're all working as a team. So to have performance excellence or to think towards what organizational excellence that you're striving for, to be the best provider, to be the best service company, to get the cargo from A to B most efficiently and safely, etc., etc. It's people that do that. So it's the people you've got to think about. And what, Patti, you've described most eloquently is, it's just an unconscious sort of support structure at the end of the day. It's tax-free, it costs nothing, just being polite and being yourself. And so for some people, it might take that little bit extra effort, or it might take another 5 minutes in your day. But when you think about it, from a business case, like safety has for years had to promote, a business case, why we should do that. It's for all those reasons that you said, that people will love to be staying with that company, want to do another project with them, do another tour. So it has great value in retention, feeling of being shipmates together. So all valid and very much so increases the happiness in the workplace. So why wouldn't you do it? And nobody's going to get an invoice for it.
No, yeah, not
Gotta
yet.
be a win-win.
But I really like what we're talking about today. And while I was listening to you, I was also thinking about the difference between listen or hearing somebody and listening to somebody. Because you have to just make room within yourself see the other person, right? And to go back to the cook, he could say, I need this in this pots and pans. But maybe if you really listen to this person and take a look at him also, or her, and, you know, take a look in the galley also, or just observe. I think if you observe more, then you also find out more, and that's an opportunity. And I think that's where we go back to the business case, because if you really listen in to people, you can also gain from it, and not gaining it from yourself, but gain from it for the group or the company or the ship or just for the day, because then you have an opportunity to make it better. Because if you observe somebody and they can be seen, and then they can also contribute their thoughts and ideas and be there, right? So if you're not doing that, then you're also missing out on all that information, and that information could be very, very valuable on the safety aspect, or for the person itself, or for yourself, or for somebody else, or for the future. So I think that's a very sensible remarks you both made, and I think yeah, that makes sense, right?
And I think the analogy of using the cook is perfect, because throughout my career, I make a purposeful point when I first join any ship, and I can join anything between sort of 4 and 8 different ships during the year. The first place I go is to see the cookie boy or the cookie girl, because that's always the font of all information, all gossip, all the happy stuff, and how to get motivated. And I'll do that before I go and see the master or the chief mate, for sure, because they're the most social, because they see everybody, and they see everyone as a minimum 3 times a day, depending on the shifts and when the meal times are. Yeah, and it's a conversation well worth having, and it adds value, because you can get the tempo and the feeling of a ship by talking to the catering staff. And I think, like we're talking, basically on the terms of allyship, is that they feel respected, they feel belonging, they feel they have a purpose, and that they're actually recognised. So for staff in those sort of positions don't get recognised; they're just expected to do this every day. So making people feel welcome and wanted.
Yeah, and some things you cannot see on the outside. Like you said, I think I can very much relate to what you just said about the catering staff and cooks and everybody working on the ship. Because sometimes you have abilities which don't necessarily come with your practical stuff, like cooking an egg or something, but it's also to interact with people and to be there and to make sure that they are fed and they're you increase the well-being. So there's more to it than meets the eye sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Most definitely. And I think to do that, like some of the things that Patti's discussed, as I have as well, to achieve that as an actionable thing is it's basically within yourself. When you do listen, practice active listening. But firstly, don't sit on the fence. What's the point? Mm-hmm. Your whole life being a fence sitter and achieve nothing, metaphorically speaking, even. But yes, the job will carry on, the job will keep going, but you lose out on so much by not being personable or interacting with all the different people that are there. So you haven't got to be the best diplomat in the world or a top grade marketeer or a negotiator or anything. All you've got to do is start that conversation, and you find out so much more about people. And when times are challenging and you have issues yourself, there's always someone around you then that's going to recognize that you didn't sit on the fence. You asked them how they were doing during that day, and and getting to know people better, and we all gain from that, most definitely.
Yeah, and another thing I heard that is also an actionable item is surrounding feedback. So, for example, women, minorities often do not get the same level of feedback as majorities, majority white, or in our culture, white males, but males. And so that's research based. It's not just my perspective, and what I mean by feedback is very specific feedback on, these are some things that I saw today during your watch, and these are some things that you should improve upon, so that whenever that will propel you in your career or whatever. so in what it's surrounding, like why this is the case is there's often a fear that if you say something, you might offend them or you might say the wrong thing. And the bottom line is specific feedback, even if it's negative, is a true gift. And we need to perceive, we need to sort of change our perception about that. Positive and negative feedback is a gift. And for women and minorities, we don't always get that feedback. So that's another form of allyship, is taking that person aside after a watch and giving that specific feedback. And then along those lines, growing leaders is another thing. So if you identified somebody in your organization that wants to become a little more of a leader or grow or propel themselves in their career, it's important to share your knowledge and share the secret sauce, as I call it, the secret sauce. In other words, I got promoted, so Gordon can say, this was my career and this is how I, went through the ranks, right? And how I did it was blah, 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 blah. And he shares the secret sauce, because what happens is not everybody has access to that secret sauce. I know in my organization, the United States Coast Guard that I grew up in, a lot of stuff was discussed on the golf course, for example. If I'm not at the golf course, I don't learn the secret sauce. And not everything was at the golf course, but it's just for a fact on the podcast. The point being is, if you're not in those conversations, you're not getting what you need to be able to advance your career. So allyship is, again, the actionable item is providing very specific, clear, both good and bad feedback, as well as providing the secret sauce as to how to advance your career. Especially in an organization, and some of these organizations, they're small, or when you get on board the vessel, it's small, but even though it's part of a big organization. So yeah, so that's another actionable item.
Yeah, very much agree with that, Patti. And of course, you're basing that around the power play as well. So whatever stage you are in your career, understand the power that you have or the influence that you might have. And really, if you're aiming for a leadership position, the whole emphasis on that is to understand what leadership actually is. And it's about facilitating and supporting the growth of others. If you're not doing that, you're just a manager. And if you're a manager, you're just taking the daily pay, you're just going through the motions, you're managing something, whether it's a spreadsheet, ultimately that could be people or shifts or whatever. But if you're a true leader, then that's what you're really doing as part of allyship, is supporting the growth of others and facilitating the careers of others. So it's got to be front and center, conscious that that's what you're there to do. And like you say, not everyone plays golf. I don't. And a lot of things and decisions were made on golf courses and probably still are. So yeah, how do we get around that? We get around that by recognizing that that's a fact, but facilitating ourselves, if we don't play golf, is how we understand that knowledge or seek that knowledge and then share it with others.
Yeah, so just to wrap this up, I think we talked about some really great things today. So thank you very much for that. I hope that, but the time goes fast, right? So we're already closing in on the 30 minutes we scheduled for this podcast. But I heard so many nice things, not only about allyship, but also, what you can do to advance your career and career of others. And I think, we can all thrive. And if we share, then we can all thrive. So that's so nice that you shared your knowledge and your experience today with us. Thank you so much. And
most definitely. It's a pleasure to do it. And I mean, I use the phrase, not sitting on the fence, be there for someone, be active on that. So yeah, that leads on to another topic that was discussed recently about bystander syndrome. If you see something, if something's out there, why shouldn't you be involved? Why shouldn't you get involved? It is easy, or the easy option, or the comfort zone might be to walk on by. Oh, that doesn't involve me or whatever. But yeah, another topic, maybe a part.
Maybe. Yeah, it's a good. Well, there's so many subjects and topics we can talk about. And I think bystander syndrome is certainly a thing we can dive deeper into.
And
because
it's an important part of
yes,
relationship,
yeah,
because you know, if you're walking by or you're blinkered and you're just going on with your job and not interacting with those around you, you know, I said,
Yeah.
you become a bystander, and
Mhm.
really can't afford to do that in the Maritime, because they are, you know, a close community of small numbers of people, and you have to do the interaction. So you can't
Good
leave
one.
it behind.
Maybe for the next episode. I'm sorry, sorry, Patti.
Yeah, just real quick, because I know we're wrapping up, but I would just invite everybody, if you have an example of allyship or you think of an actionable way that you can be an ally, if you could please put it in the comments, I would love to see, because I think all of our collective wisdom would be so powerful on this topic. So thank you,
Yes,
Eva, for coordinating this.
that's a really good one. I
Perfect.
think, yes, we can just totally reach out to everybody, and I think we're doing that now. So if you're listening and have an idea like, oh, this is what I do and this is what really worked, or this is what I experienced and this is what I liked, or this worked for me, then yes, please let us know, because then others can read it and then we can all benefit from each other's experience. So thank you for pointing that out also, Patti. And thank you also for watching and listening to this podcast episode live on YouTube today. And please know that we are having these episodes every 2 weeks on YouTube. So we look forward to see you again. And if you want to know more about the Center for Ocean Policy and Economics, please go to our website. That's www.thecope.org. Yes, or just send us a message in DM. That's also always possible, of course. So for today, I would just like to thank you very much and wish you a wonderful, wonderful day today.
All right, thanks, Eva. Thanks, Gordon. Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Patti. Thanks, Eva.
Bye.
Thanks for keeping the discussion going. Have a passion.